I was framed by my coworker for a major scandal. Now I'm fighting to prove my innocence. I always thought the office was a place where hard work paid off, where dedication and loyalty were rewarded. But after what happened, I realized how naive I had been. It only takes one person, one backstabbing, jealous coworker, to turn your entire world upside down. And for me, that person was Maya. The day everything came crashing down started like any other. I walked into the office with my coffee in hand, mentally running through my tasks for the day. As the head of the marketing department, I had a lot on my plate, but I thrived under pressure. For years, I had poured my heart and soul into this company, and it had paid off. My boss, Mr. Peterson, trusted me with high-level projects, and I had built a reputation for being reliable, efficient, and creative. But none of that mattered the moment I saw the email that would change everything. I was sitting at my desk, answering a few client emails when the message popped up in my inbox. The subject line read, "Urgent, fraud investigation." My heart skipped a beat as I clicked on the email. It was from Mr. Peterson, and the tone was cold and formal, nothing like his usual friendly demeanor. The message was brief. "Lila, I need to see you in my office immediately. It's come to my attention that some very serious accusations have been made against you. We'll discuss this in private." My stomach twisted into knots. Fraud? Accusations? None of it made any sense. I had never done anything remotely unethical, and I couldn't imagine why Mr. Peterson would even think to send such an email. My hands shook as I reread the message, trying to wrap my head around what was happening. I took a deep breath and walked toward his office, trying to keep my anxiety at bay. But the moment I stepped through the door and saw the look on his face, I knew something was horribly wrong. "Sit down, Lila," he said, his voice tense. I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Mr. Peterson sighed, rubbing his temples before sliding a folder across the desk toward me. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence is compelling. I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the documents inside. My blood ran cold as I saw what was in front of me. Emails, financial records, and spreadsheets, all pointing to one thing. I was being accused of embezzling funds from one of our biggest clients. This isn't right," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't do this. I don't even know what this is." Mr. Peterson leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "The evidence says otherwise, Lila. These emails came from your work account, and the transfers were made using your login credentials." I stared at the papers in disbelief. Someone had framed me, but I had no idea who or why. "There's no way this is true," I said, my voice rising. "I've been with this company for years. I've never even thought about doing something like this." "I want to believe you," Mr. Peterson said quietly, "but the company has to investigate this. Until we can figure out what's going on, I have no choice but to suspend you, effective immediately." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Suspend me? You can't." "I don't have a choice," he interrupted, his tone firm. "This is serious, Lila. Until we get to the bottom of this, you're not allowed on company property, and we're freezing your access to the system." I sat there in shock, trying to process what was happening. My career, everything I had worked so hard for, was slipping away right in front of me, and I didn't even know why. "Who accused me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who did this?" Mr. Peterson hesitated for a moment before replying. "Maya was the one who discovered the irregularities. She brought it to my attention a few days ago." Maya. The name hit me like a slap to the face. Maya was my coworker, someone I had worked with for years. We had been friendly enough, but there had always been an underlying tension between us. She was ambitious, always eager to climb the corporate ladder, and I had heard the rumors that she was gunning for my position. But I never thought she would stoop so low as to frame me for a crime I didn't commit. "Maya," I repeated, my voice filled with disbelief. "Why would she accuse me of something like this?" Mr. Peterson sighed, looking uncomfortable. I don't know. But the fact remains that the evidence points to you. We'll have to investigate thoroughly, and until then, you're on suspension. I wanted to scream, to plead with him to believe me, but I knew it was useless. The damage had been done. If you're not following our channel, you might never see it again. But if you're subscribed, congratulations. You'll always have access to the most interesting stories, whenever you want to watch and listen. I walked out of Mr. Peterson's office in a daze, my mind spinning as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Maya, someone I thought I could trust, or at least work with civilly, had thrown me under the bus. And not just any bus, but one that could ruin my entire career, my reputation, and even my future. The accusation of embezzlement was so severe that I couldn't wrap my head around how anyone could believe it, let alone how Maya had managed to fabricate the evidence against me. As I gathered my things from my desk under the watchful eye of security, something I never imagined would happen to me, I glanced around the office, wondering if my coworkers already knew. Were they whispering about me behind my back? Had Maya already begun planting seeds of doubt in everyone's mind? I could feel their eyes on me as I packed up my belongings, but I didn't have the strength to meet their gazes. My mind was racing with questions. Why would she do this? How had she planted all this fake evidence? And, most importantly, how was I going to clear my name? That night, I sat at home, staring at the files Mr. Peterson had given me. The documents were damning. Emails from my account authorizing transfers of large sums of money to personal accounts, bank records that somehow linked me to the stolen funds, and timestamps that seemed to place the blame squarely on me. But I hadn't done any of it. The worst part was that it looked real. Someone had gone through the trouble of falsifying everything, down to the smallest detail. Whoever was behind this knew exactly what they were doing, and Maya was the one who had found it all. I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for the investigation to play out. If I didn't act fast, this could destroy my entire life. I needed to figure out how she had set me up and why. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number of my closest friend at the office, Clara. She had been my confidant for years, and if anyone could help me make sense of this, it was her. I prayed she hadn't been swayed by Maya's lies yet. Lila? Clara answered after a few rings, her voice filled with concern. What's going on? I heard something happened at the office, but no one's giving me a straight answer. My throat tightened as I tried to explain. Maya framed me, Clara. She's accusing me of stealing money from the company, and she somehow planted evidence to make it look like I'm guilty. There was a brief silence on the other end before Clara finally spoke. Wait, what? Maya? Are you sure? I'm positive, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. She's the one who reported it to Mr. Peterson, and now all the evidence points to me. But it's not true. You know I would never do something like this. I know you wouldn't, Clara said softly. But why would she do this? What does she gain? That was the question that had been haunting me all night. I don't know, but she's always wanted my position. Maybe this is her way of getting rid of me. I wouldn't put it past her, Clara muttered. She's been gunning for a promotion ever since she started. But this? Framing you? That's next level. I sighed, leaning back against the couch. I need to find proof that she's behind this. Something that shows she set me up. Clara was silent for a moment. Then she spoke up with a hint of determination in her voice. Okay, here's what we can do. I'll keep my ears open at the office, see if I can figure out what Maya's up to, or if she's slipping up. And you need to find out how she got access to your work account. Maybe someone in IT can help? It wasn't much, but it was a start. Thanks, Clara. I don't know what I'd do without you. We'll get through this, she reassured me. Just hang in there. The next day, I followed Clara's advice and contacted Brian, one of the IT guys at the office. I knew he had access to login records, and if anyone could figure out how Maya, or whoever was behind this, had hacked into my account, it was him. I called him under the guise of wanting to check something regarding a project I had been working on, careful not to raise any suspicion about the real reason for my inquiry. Thankfully, Brian was friendly, and he agreed to help me without asking too many questions. Can you tell if anyone accessed my account from another location or device? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as I spoke with him over the phone, just to be sure everything's secure. Brian tapped away at his keyboard for a few moments before replying. It looks like your account was accessed from a different IP address last week, but the login was under your credentials. Are you saying this wasn't you? My pulse quickened. No, it wasn't. Can you tell where the login came from? Hold on, Brian said, his tone growing more serious. I'll have to dig a little deeper. There was a long pause as he continued typing. Finally, he spoke again, his voice quieter. Lila, it looks like the login came from within the building, but the IP is tied to a different device. Not your workstation. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it, the proof I needed. Someone had logged into my account from inside the office, but not from my desk. I wasn't the one who had authorized those fraudulent transactions. Can you tell which computer it came from? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through me. Brian hesitated. I'm not really supposed to share this information without going through the proper channels. Please, Brian, I pleaded. I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't important. There was another pause before he finally gave in. All right, it looks like the login came from Maya's workstation. I felt like the ground had just shifted beneath my feet. Maya had been using her computer to log into my account. She had access the whole time, and now I had the proof. But it wasn't over yet. Now that I had this information, I needed to figure out how to use it. I needed to expose her without tipping her off, without giving her the chance to cover her tracks. Maya had set the trap, but now I was ready to turn it back on her. That night, I met with Clara to discuss my next steps. We sat in a quiet cafe, huddled over cups of coffee as we went over everything I had discovered. I showed her the login records from Brian and told her about the other evidence I was gathering. This is huge, Clara said, her eyes wide. If you bring this to Mr. Peterson, Maya's done for. I know, I replied, though a part of me was still hesitant. But what if she finds a way to spin it? She's been so careful, Clara. She's made sure that everything points to me. That's why we need more, Clara said firmly. We need to catch her in the act. Something undeniable that will expose her for who she really is. I nodded, feeling a spark of determination flare inside me. Maya had been playing dirty this entire time, but now it was my turn. I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to make sure she never had the chance to do this to anyone else. I spent the next few days holding my breath, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Everything was in place, and Maya was about to walk into the trap I had set for her. The fake email I had drafted about the evidence I supposedly had on her was sitting in my inbox, waiting to be discovered. And now, it was just a matter of time before she took the bait. Brian, the IT guy, had set up a real-time alert on my account, so the moment Maya tried to log in using my credentials again, I would know. I couldn't afford to rush things. Maya had been careful so far, and I had to be even more meticulous. She needed to incriminate herself, to show her hand, and I had to catch her in the act. 2 days after setting the trap, I got the message I had been waiting for. Brian, she just logged into your account again. My heart raced. This was it. Maya was inside my account, snooping around, probably panicking after reading the fake email about the evidence I supposedly had on her. She was likely trying to erase anything that pointed back to her, thinking she could still get away with it. But what Maya didn't know was that Brian had been watching her every move. He had access to all the login records, and we had timestamps proving that she had been the one logging into my account, not me. This wasn't just a random accusation anymore. I had concrete proof. I texted Clara immediately. Me, she took the bait. It's happening. Clara's reply came quickly. Clara, I'll be ready. Let's end this. That afternoon, I made my way back to the office, trying to calm the adrenaline that was surging through me. I had already sent an urgent email to Mr. Peterson, asking for a private meeting to discuss new developments in the case. I knew he was skeptical, but once he saw the evidence, there would be no denying what had happened. When I walked into the office, Maya was already there, sitting at her desk with that smug smile she always wore. She had no idea that her world was about to crumble. I smiled politely, pretending as if nothing was wrong, as if I hadn't just caught her red-handed. Inside, I was shaking with a mixture of nerves and fury, but I kept my cool. I needed to play this right. "Hey, Lila," Maya said casually, glancing up from her computer. "Heard you're still on suspension. Tough break." I forced a smile. "Yeah, it's been rough. But hopefully, everything will be cleared up soon." She nodded, that infuriatingly fake sympathy in her voice. "I'm sure it will be. Just hang in there." Little did she know, the noose was tightening around her. Later that afternoon, I was called into Mr. Peterson's office. Clara and Brian were waiting outside, ready to back me up with everything we had gathered. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, knowing that this was my moment to set the record straight. Mr. Peterson looked up from his desk as I entered, his expression serious. "Lila, you said you had new information?" I nodded, sitting down in front of him. "Yes, and I think you'll want to hear it." I began by explaining how I had grown suspicious of Maya's involvement, how she had been the one to initially report the so-called irregularities in my account, and how she had planted the false evidence to make it look like I was guilty. Mr. Peterson listened carefully, his brow furrowing as I laid out the details. Then, I pulled out the login records that Brian had provided, proof that someone had been accessing my account from a different computer, specifically Maya's workstation. I showed him the timestamps, which lined up perfectly with the dates of the fraudulent transactions. "Here's the proof that I wasn't the one making those transfers," I said, handing him the records. "Maya has been logging into my account from her computer. She's the one behind all of this." Mr. Peterson examined the documents, his face growing more serious by the second. "This is damning," he muttered. "If what you're saying is true, we have a major problem." But I wasn't done yet. "I also have a recording," I continued, my voice steady. Clara confronted Maya about the rumors, and while she didn't outright confess, she admitted to snooping in my account and hinted that she had help accessing it. She thought she could manipulate me, but now we have her on record admitting to her actions. I played the recording, and Mr. Peterson's face turned pale as Maya's voice echoed through the room, nervously trying to deflect Clara's questions. It wasn't a full confession, but it was enough to confirm her involvement. When the recording ended, Mr. Peterson sat back in his chair, letting out a heavy sigh. "This is worse than I thought. She framed me," I said quietly. "I would never steal from this company. I've dedicated years to building a reputation here, and Maya tried to destroy it for her own gain." Mr. Peterson nodded, his expression grim. "I can see that now. I'll need to speak with HR, but rest assured, Maya won't get away with this." It didn't take long for things to unravel after that. Maya was called into a meeting with Mr. Peterson and HR later that week, and by the time she walked out of the office, her face was ashen, and her confidence had crumbled. The evidence was undeniable. She had been caught red-handed, and there was no spinning the story in her favor anymore. A few days later, she was terminated. Word spread quickly around the office about what had happened, about how Maya had tried to frame me, how she had been manipulating people and falsifying documents to get ahead. The co-workers who had once doubted me now looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and respect, and I could feel the weight of the accusations lifting from my shoulders. The day Mr. Peterson officially reinstated me, I sat at my desk, finally feeling like I could breathe again. The nightmare was over, and my reputation had been restored. I wasn't just fighting to prove my innocence anymore. I had fought for my career, for my dignity, and for my place in the company I had worked so hard to build. Clara came by my desk, giving me a small smile. "We did it," she said quietly. I nodded, feeling a rush of gratitude for her unwavering support. "Yeah, we did." But deep down, I knew that this wasn't just a victory for me. It was a reminder of how quickly trust can be shattered, how dangerous ambition can be when it's driven by greed and envy. Maya had learned that lesson the hard way, and while I didn't take any pleasure in her downfall, I knew that justice had been served. I had won, not just by proving my innocence, but by standing up for myself when it mattered most. And that, more than anything, was the real victory. The end.